In 70 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and 3 mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Somalia is currently facing its lowest cereal harvest since 2011, threatening an existing fragile food security situation in the country. This is according to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. Late and erratic rains during the April to June cropping season and low river levels are said to be the main factors that have led to the poor harvest.
The overall humanitarian response plan for 2019 continues to be less than 50% funded for this year. And should the response not continue, at least 1 million people more will shift up into emergency levels of food insecurity.
We're expecting rains from October to December. We can have 2 things. Those rains can create a flood in the country because, we never been clean all those rivers. And if you don't have rains,
what is important to note is that the people that are very food insecure are mostly in rural areas. And I think we need to keep this in mind. We're talking about keeping people producing their crops and allowing them to stay there.
In other news, Germany's foreign minister has been on a working visit to Sudan, where he met with state officials. During the meeting, he urged Sudan to actively work toward having its name removed from the United States list of sponsors of terrorism. This comes as Sudan appoints its first cabinet after the overthrow of longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir in April.
A crucial precondition for Sudan's positive economic and financial development will be that it's no longer listed by the United States on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. That will be largely dependent on the developments in Sudan and how reforms are implemented in the coming weeks and months.
We have not yet reached an understanding or a solution for the issue of removing Sudan from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Anything else won't work because all other issues, whether in the economy or in peace, are all connected to what we achieve in this field. A long and very positive discussion took place with the US administration and all of its components, and we expect more developments on this issue. It is very important for the cabinet ministers to see all of us Sudanese people represented in it. All regions of Sudan should be represented. The dialogue with the Freedom and Change forces is focused on this. This is why there is still discussion on it.
To the Bahamas now, where Hurricane Dorian has been causing a trail of devastation for the past 3 days and has killed at least 7 people. On Tuesday morning, it was downgraded to a Category 2 hurricane on the 5-level wind scale. But the storm has grown in size and is slow to move, complicating rescue efforts. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
Hurricane Dorian has dumped as much as 76 centimeters of rain on the Bahamas. The storm has carved a path of destruction through the Atlantic archipelago, with officials predicting more fatalities ahead.
Let me talk about our initial assessment of Abaco. 5 deaths are confirmed. There may be additional deaths that we can expect Of the 25 individuals that were transported to New Providence, 2 has already succumbed. That would take the number of deaths to 7.
Dorian is one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the islands of the Bahamas. Relief workers are preparing for a humanitarian crisis. But aid agencies are waiting for the all clear before they can send teams on the ground to assess the situation, set up operations, and provide the necessary assistance.
So we're expecting a pretty complicated and difficult situation. We've had a system that has been steadily impacting those islands for the past 24 hours plus, with extreme winds, extreme storm surge, extreme rains. So we're expecting to find a very complicated situation on the ground.
According to the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, as many as 13,000 homes in the Bahamas may have been destroyed or severely damaged.
They need every piece of help they can get. It's devastating. It's heartbreaking when you look and see the initial videos that are coming out of there. And so we know from what we've been seeing and hearing that this one will require the help of all persons.
Hurricane Dorian remains extremely dangerous as meteorologists try to figure out where it's headed next. In the Bahamas, the exact toll of the devastation will not be clear until the storm completely passes. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
In Brazil, soldiers and firefighters have joined forces to extinguish the fires raging within the country's Amazon. President Jair Bolsonaro has made tens of thousands of troops available to help combat the blaze. But this comes only after the fires entered the global spotlight. The government has drawn widespread criticism for failing to protect the region, as well as its pro-business agenda. Over 30,000 fires were registered in the Brazilian Amazon during the month of August. Fires are set annually in Brazil and some are even legal. But environmentalists attribute this year's surge to Bolsonaro's economic development campaign. Some speculate that his policies have emboldened ranchers and other business interests to clear vast tracts of the rainforest. The presidential decree, which banned fires for land clearing for a period of 60 days, has now been limited to the Amazon.
Our mission is to stop the blazes and to investigate environmental crimes. Our presence here is important to avoid those environmental crimes because, according to a presidential decree, fires are banned.
All that smoke creates confusion because you don't know if the fire is big or how it is.
With the upcoming 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, CGTN interviewed Olusegun Obasanjo, a former president of Nigeria. During his time in office, Obasanjo actively promoted cooperation between China and Nigeria. He visited China for the first time in the late 1980s. He said that what he saw left a deep impression.
When I first went to China, what struck me is the large population. But not just the large population where I did not see anybody starving. Everybody is well fed. It is near miracle to have a population of over 1 billion people and everybody is well fed.
The 82-year-old has visited China many times, first as the Nigerian president, but afterwards as chair of the African Union. He's visited China over 20 times in the last 30 years. He said that he's witnessed great changes, especially in the countryside.
I went to a rural area, and what did I find? They were drawing water from the well, just as we were doing in my village. About 4 years ago, I went to the same area. That's gone. And they were happily and joyfully showing me what they are doing on their farm.
The former Nigerian president said that he's most interested in China's economic development.
China is dynamic. It's a dynamic society. And I have always maintained that because of the way China goes on as a dynamic society, China will lead the world. One, China has the tenacity to focus and remain focused. Most of our African countries, we think that when a regime passes on, the next regime will feel that it has nothing to do. But in China, you build on what is on the ground. And of course, where you have to make amendment, you make amendment.
Obasanjo said that China's role in the international arena will continue to grow.
You cannot do away with China. China has come to stay as a world power, a global actor, and that must be accepted.
In his spare time, Obasanjo reads the works of President Xi Jinping. He also keeps up with the latest developments under the Belt and Road Initiative.
No, he's a great leader. I love him. He's a great leader. And he's courageous. He knows what he wants. And he's getting his country to achieve what he believes is the best. And he's pursuing it relentlessly. Where he thinks that there's need for change or amendment, he's making it. And for me, that is what leadership is about. China is a great country that will make great progress and will lead the world. I wish China well, and I wish China good luck.
All the business news coming up for you after the break, including the World Economic Forum kicks off in Cape Town with the fourth industrial revolution in focus. And the US manufacturing sector dips for the first time in 3 years.
No one again he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The activity, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The 28th World Economic Forum on Africa has kicked off in Cape Town in South Africa. The event focuses on shaping inclusive growth as well as shared futures in the fourth industrial revolution. But as CGTN's Ramanayang now explains, this year's edition comes at a time when major African economies are struggling.
Now, the 28th edition of the World Economic Forum on Africa starts off with a cloud hanging over it, as the host country, South Africa, is struggling to contain a wave of xenophobic riots in its biggest city, Johannesburg. Still, ahead of this meeting, a survey did point to unemployment and underemployment as a top risk that faces economies right across the continent. In South Africa, for instance, the unemployment rate is an eye-watering 29%, a record number. And remember, that's happening as growth slows down. But South Africa is not alone in facing that problem. Nigeria, for example, which is home to the continent's biggest population and biggest economy, had an unemployment rate of 23.1% by the end of September 2018. Simply put, these economies and many others in Africa are not creating enough jobs fast enough in order to absorb all the graduates they produce every single year. So fixing that problem while enhancing intra-African trade, as well as the challenges and opportunities presented by things like automation and machine learning, these are all among the topics that will be discussed at this year's event. As far as the host country is concerned, however, there is a slight bright spot, at least as far as second quarter GDP data is concerned. With power cuts that plagued the economy for most of the first part of the year now fading off, growth rebounded to over 3%. But remember, the full-year growth forecast from the country's central bank is 0.6%. So that bright spot might actually fade faster than expected. Ramanyang, CGTN, Cape Town.
Civil society organisations in Nigeria have staged a protest outside the British Embassy in Abuja over a British judgment on debt. The protesters are seeking the reversal of a $9.6 billion UK court ruling which cites that Nigeria breached a gas supply contract with Irish engineering firm P&ID. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has the details.
Hundreds of placard-carrying protesters marching to the UK embassy in the capital Abuja. Their placards speak volume, and their chants too. The protesters are pushing against a judgment by a UK court. Nigeria is to pay a fine of $9.6 billion to Irish engineering firm P&ID for breach of contract.
We see this as a kangaroo judgment.
Yes.
That judgment cannot stand.
At all.
That judgment cannot stand.
At all.
That judgment will inflict pain on over 200 million Nigerian people.
Yes, sir.
We cannot take that.
P&ID entered into a gas and processing deal with Nigeria in 2010. The deal entailed that Nigeria gets 85% of refined gas, while P&ID gets 15% alongside the byproducts. But the company claimed that after investing about $40 million in the project, Nigeria breached their agreement when government failed to build a pipeline. Protesters here want them back on the drawing board.
We recognize and appreciate the cordial relationship that has existed between the British government and the Nigerian government. And we urge that the two parties to review the contract and negotiate the payment awarded against Nigeria.
P&ID agreed to a settlement of $850 million in 2015 before the Buhari-led administration was sworn in, but the government put the settlement on the back burner. Now the $9.6 billion sum include interest accrued and income lost. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
The volume of Chinese trade and investment in Ghana is increasing significantly. Last year, Chinese registered flows into the country exceeded $123 million, making the Asian economic giant Ghana's largest trading partner. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai explored ways to improve trade and bilateral relations with Ghanaian ambassador to China.
Trade between Ghana and China in terms of exports from China to Ghana has gone up by 11.69%. And also exports from Ghana to China, which was quite low, has gone up by about 3.7%. Our target is to make sure that we can keep increasing it because there is a serious trade imbalance. But the only way we can do that is by strengthening our manufacturing sector because China needs a lot of products, and I believe that we have a competitive edge in terms of food products.
How is the people and people exchange between Ghana and China going, and how is it impacting on development of both countries?
Right now, Ghana has the highest number of African students in China. We have about 6,470 students, which is quite a dramatic increase from when I took over as ambassador, because we've been working very hard to push the numbers. And this year, I think across Africa, we had the highest number of scholarships. 300, the ambassador told me. And we're also looking at areas of vocational training where people just come to acquire skill sets within 6 months. Because I believe that as a country, that is what we need to develop the simple things which make life easy for everybody, but also earns you an income.
Ghana continues to receive huge investments from China. We can talk about the $2 billion announced by the Chinese government last year, which is going to help Ghana bridge its infrastructural deficit. What's more should we be looking at getting from China?
In terms of investment flow, we want to make it a two-way. We are working very hard with the Cocoa Board. We're working very hard with some of the manufacturers like Casapreco to get their products into the Chinese market. Because, the Chinese middle class is also growing. And therefore, if we can get even 2 to 3% of Chinese consumers to eat a Ghanaian chocolate bar a day, the revenue flows into this country will be huge, So for me, that is my major focus, more than maybe, it's good for us to get the Chinese investments into Ghana at this time because we need to develop the infrastructure. Unless you have the infrastructure, you have the roads, you have a cheap source of energy, it's very difficult to also set up your manufacturing base. So from the China side, that's what we are looking at them for.
US manufacturing activities shrank in August for the first time in nearly 3 years, with new orders and hiring declining sharply. The latest plunge has been attributed to the ongoing trade friction between the world's top two economies, which have weighed on America's business confidence. According to a monthly survey by the Institute for Supply Management, the US Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index slid to 49.1% last month. That figure is the lowest reading issued in America since 2016. More than half of those surveyed by the association pointed to economic uncertainty as a drag on their businesses. Shifting now to Australia, and the weakening Aussie dollar is causing financial pain to consumers and businesses. Last week, the currency slipped to a fresh 10-year low, taking it back to global financial crisis levels. But as CGTN's Greg Navarro now reports, there may be a silver lining to the troubles when it comes to the Australian economy.
If you're looking for a way to unlock your kitchen's potential, Dean Welsh believes he can help.
And it's a beautiful 6mm, solid 6mm stainless steel benchtop.
Think Designs has been selling imported kitchen design solutions to consumers for the last 6 years. But the cost of importing these products has increased lately as the Australian dollar has dipped to a low that hasn't been seen for a decade.
We can't go back to the client and say, oh look, the exchange rates fluctuated and look, can you pay a little bit more money? You can't do that. You've just got to accept that as part of this kind of business that you are going to lose profitability in these projects.
The Australian dollar has been weakening since mid-July and now sits below the 70 US cent mark, a level not seen since the global financial crisis.
And a key factor here has been a strengthening US dollar, but also pressure on commodity prices and concerns about the global growth outlook.
That's putting added financial pressures on Australian consumers in a number of ways, including here at the pump, where petrol prices have reached a 4-year high. Some economists believe that concerns about how a trade war will weigh on China's economy is adding to the dollar's downward push. China is Australia's biggest trading partner. The Reserve Bank of Australia recently dropped the nation's interest rate to a historic low of just 1% in an effort to stimulate a sluggish economy marked by stagnant wage growth.
Well, while the RBA shares the growth concerns of the markets, the lower Australian dollar is good news for the Australian economy. It's a way of importing growth, and particularly if trade relationships are being restrung around the globe, a lower currency is a real advantage to an economy. So I'd say the RBA is probably cheering the lower levels of the Australian dollar.
Tourism is benefiting, so are some exporters, including the country's mining sector as a whole, which accounts for more than half of all Australian exports. And economists believe a fluctuating dollar plays a vital role in the health of the nation's economy.
Yeah, it's the shock absorber. I mean, we didn't have a recession during the global financial crisis. We didn't have a recession during the Asian financial crisis. We haven't had a recession for 30 years because the dollar takes all the absorption away.
And as global markets continue to react to an escalating trade war, economists expect the Australian dollar to remain below the 70 US cent mark into 2020. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
In crisis-stricken Venezuela, more than 1 million people have fled the country's hyperinflation to look for jobs in neighbouring Colombia. For these newcomers, digital platforms offering freelance opportunities are now a lifeline. From the Colombian capital of Bogota, here's our correspondent Michelle Beg.
Every day, 29-year-old Sofia Guerrero gets on her bike and pedals through all kinds of obstacles to make a living.
We battle thirst, rain, heat, hunger, all types of difficulties, even going to the bathroom. But we continue.
Guerrero is a sort of freelance personal shopper. She works for the Colombian mobile app called Rappi, which promises a fast and prompt delivery of anything and everything for its users. Guerrero is accompanied by her husband, Andre Garcia. As Venezuelan migrants living in Bogota, finding work was difficult. Digital platforms that offer freelance work like Rappi, DoorDash, and Uber became their best option for making money.
It is an independent job. You don't have to answer to a boss. You are your own employer. And it is a company with a presence in many countries of Latin America.
The job isn't at all easy. Guerrero works from 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., Monday through Monday. The company pays her according to the distance traveled. She says she can earn anything from $4 to up to $12 a day, depending on the demand. Competition has become fierce.
There are many Venezuelans. There are so many Rappi workers. There just isn't enough work anymore. There can be 100 requests for deliveries, but there are thousands of Rappi.
Rappi has come under criticism most recently because of the shortcomings of working in the so-called gig economy. Entertainers sometimes refer to their performances as gigs. The word has become a slang term referring to almost any short-term freelance work. In the gig economy, freelancers get fast cash. Employers save cash because they don't have to pay employee health benefits. And for Sofia, this job means less harassment. When she first arrived 3 years ago, she began working as a manager at a bar where men made assumptions about female refugees.
I came here to work, never to sell myself. I won't do it no matter how difficult things get. Everyone has the right to do with their bodies as they please, but let's not judge everyone the same, because not all of us prostitute ourselves.
Her strength to keep going is her 12-year-old daughter, who is still back at home. Sofia hasn't seen her in almost 2 years.
She recently graduated, and I wanted to be there, but I couldn't. She asked me to bring her, but I'm not yet stable here for her to come live with me.
Colombian lawmakers continue to look for ways to regulate the tech industry to protect workers and customers. But time means money, and these migrant workers don't have the time or the money to wait. They just have to keep pedaling. Michelle Begues, CGTN, Bogota.
We are going to a short break now. Lots more to come, including fruity treats for animals as South Korea prepares to celebrate their Thanksgiving Day.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Lesotho, cannabis is grown legally by the company Migrant and is regulated by the government. Known as green gold, the Southern Kingdom is tapping into a booming industry. It's also the first country in Africa to allow the cultivation of cannabis for medicinal purposes. CGTN's Daniela Pearson now reports.
Medical marijuana is a $100 billion global industry. The small landlocked kingdom of Lesotho is hoping to get its share of the so-called green gold rush. It became the first African country to legalize the cultivation of medical marijuana in 2017, prompting companies like Migrant to set up shop just outside the capital, Maseru. Government support and great weather for growing weed makes the mountain kingdom ideal for this business.
I think Lesotho is great in the sense that it's very untouched. So the air you breathe here is clean. The mountain air is amazing. You have streams and water here in abundance, which is clean. And so the conditions are favourable for growing cannabis, definitely.
In a country with a struggling economy, medical cannabis is seen as a way to boost employment and increase revenue. But a license to trade legally costs about $33,000, a price small-scale farmers just can't afford. Motiba Tamai, a small-scale fruit farmer outside Masiru, wishes he could benefit from the booming cannabis market.
Most of the people have been living from marijuana, but illegally. So we were hoping that this will be an opportunity for them to farm it legally now and try to improve their lives. So if they don't get that opportunity because of finance, I think it's a little bit not fair for the people.
In a country where marijuana has always been traditionally cultivated, many are still forced to smuggle it across the border into South Africa.
It is a dangerous activity, but my children survive because of this. They can have clothes and food, but I can die from smuggling.
The UN estimates that the illegal trafficking of cannabis is the third largest form of income in the last decade. But at this stage, legislation prioritizes foreign companies, largely excluding the local farmers from an industry expected to be worth around $270 billion in less than 10 years. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
In 10 days' time, South Koreans will celebrate their Thanksgiving Day, known as Chuseok. Koreans will visit their ancestral hometowns and share traditional food during the 3-day holiday. To celebrate this festival, a South Korean zoo is preparing special fruit dishes for the animals in their care. Let's now take a look. All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Senegal knocked out of contention at the ongoing Basketball World Cup in China.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.